and welcome to Pursue the Pull, the podcast that is geared towards helping people who are looking for a career change or for those who want to pursue their dreams and maybe start their own business. Now, how do we differ from all of the other inspirational podcasts out there? Well, what we do is we interview people from a range of industries. So if you want to start your own marketing agency or accountancy firm or even floristry, whatever it might be, we have someone specific from that industry to tell you how to get started, the highs and lows, and most importantly, the truth. Now, we are one group, one community, and we have all of the answers. I am your host, Stacey Bevan, and today I have an amazing guest called Dean. He is the CEO of A&Co Group of companies based in Malta, and he's also the founder of Pitchora and startup incubator Basement2Boardroom. So first of all, thank you so much for joining us, Dean. We are excited for the insight that you're going to give us today.
Stacey, thanks for the invite. Good to be here. Hopefully after a conversation we can bring some interesting topics to help, the young aspiring or people looking for a change in their lives.
Brilliant, and I'm certain that you will. So before we go into the questions that have been devised by our audience, I just want to give a bit of background into you and what it is that you do. So you were born and raised in Malta, and your educational background is primarily in finance and strategy, and you hold a master's degree in financial services. You are also a certified public accountant and a fellow within the Association of Chartered Certified Accountants and within the MIA. You also sit on several boards and chair a committee within the Malta Institute of Accountants. You started your career as a financial auditor with Deloitte, and after successfully completing your ACCA degree, you then became a financial advisor and consultant within Deloitte's offices, specialising primarily in corporate finance, business valuations, market intelligence, and transactions. Now, following 9 years at Deloitte, you joined the Attard Co Group, A&Co, as the CFO. Now, today, you are the CEO of this group of companies, an organisation that dates back to 1921 as a family business. Now, today, the group has over 220 employees within 17 different and diverse organisations. And in 2019, as part of a succession plan, you started developing the finance function to operate independently and assume the role of CEO of this actual group. Now, as CEO, you are responsible for the overall strategy of the group that is involved in various diverse sectors, including scientific, medical, forensic, security, consultancy, and real estate. And in parallel, in 2016, you assumed the role of Managing Director within Firstbridge Services Limited, which is a professional advisory firm within the A&Co Group. You also led the firm's innovation arm with a specific focus on disruptive technology and supporting startup and access to finance. And then you became the founder of startup competition Pitchora and startup incubator Basement2Boardroom. And look, this is amazing. You are doing so much and juggling so much. So I'm really interested to know where this has all come about. So I'm going to go into the first question, if that's okay with you.
Absolutely. Let's go.
Let's go. All right. So tell me a little bit about your background. You are extremely successful. You are doing so much. How did it all start, and how did you know that the financial services was the sector that you wanted to get into or that you were passionate about? Where did this all begin?
Wow. Okay. I date back to my sort of first levels of education in finance, which dates back to secondary school. I find that teachers have an incredible impact on students nowadays, and you're lucky enough to come across those strong characters that help you find your strengths. Then, you're one of the lucky ones, I would say. I was fortunate enough to meet a fantastic individual who believed in me and, showed me the real experiential understanding of finance and accounting, even though it was my original option. I must say that not many people know that, but I had a very different direction in mind. But then through my strengths, I assumed that she saw that and she helped me push me in that direction. So I kind of went with it. I really didn't give it much thought. I was always very sort of creative in the way I like to approach things. although I'm quite loyal, as most of my profile kind of shows, I like that openness. So I tend to find places that let me or allow me to, realize my potential and experiment in a meaningful way. So that's something which was always quite consistent. So I really didn't give it that much thought when I was much younger. As time went by, I started finding much more interest in things, and I made a lifelong commitment, I would say, to make sure that I'm constantly challenging myself, whether it's the educational experience or the experience at large. I'm not quite too sure, but I'm definitely making the educational journey a big part of what I do, whether it's in my private life or in business. I need to remain interested, and that interest creates so much motivation for me. I happen to have, a huge passion for numbers and quantifying things, just to see whatever I'm after can kind of have a bit of a weight of measure, if you like. So my experience, my educational background allowed me to use the structured element of financial accounting, brought about my experience in advisory, which brought out my creative side of business and strategy. But I would always sort of boil it down to remaining interested and wanting to, be in a constant state of learning and educating myself. That keeps me on my toes and makes every day interesting.
Incredible. And then, so you did a lot of studying, you went on to get your degrees, and then you started working for Deloitte, which is obviously a very well-known company. Did you have in mind at that stage that you were just wanting to work for this company, or did you have in mind that, you wanted to get to a level where you were CEO and then you were bringing in your own businesses? What was your mindset at the time?
Relationships. Let's start from there. Relations are a big part of life. Again, one of those turning points in my life was I was able to meet with the then CEO of Deloitte, and he was explaining to me at a very young age. I took up ACCA while I had just finished sixth form, so I took that journey where I decided to study and work at the same time. I didn't give it much thought, to be honest. At the time, I was 19, going on 20. And I was like, look, this is a real, interesting firm to work at. We promote a very healthy sort of work-life balance, but we do push people to be the best that they can be. If they, embrace that, you'll do fantastically well. I took him up on that challenge. I enjoyed the ride. I played the game as best as I could. I never gave it much more thought than, just taking it year by year. I would say that there was always this sense of embracing a challenge, but also giving my personality that space to work in. And, I'm extremely grateful for those individuals who impacted my life during my time at Deloitte. As time went by, I constantly felt challenged, and the opportunity presented itself to take on a role as a CFO, but it wasn't necessarily coming from a place that I had to leave or move on from Deloitte, but it was just the next step for me, which obviously I thought through quite a bit with my family and closest friends. And I just wanted to jump on the opportunity because I felt I always wanted, to compete even with myself, to take the opportunities that they came along. The timing seemed right. I felt ready for it, and I just wanted to take on the challenge. But I had an extremely enjoyable and interesting educational experience. I always felt I gave as much as I could to the firm, and the firm always gave me the support I needed. So it was just part of my journey, really, and I just want to embrace it and take it on.
Okay, so talk to me about the transition from, because you went to this new company, you became CFO. Now, going from CFO to CEO, it's different, right? So how did you handle that? How did you prepare for that? Did you find it scary because it's a big responsibility? It's a big company. Was there a bit of fear there? Like, did you have self-doubt? And if so, how did you overcome that? So what was that transition period like, going from CFO to CEO?
So I joined the company around 2014, and it was made very clear to me by the family who were basically managing the organization. I'm an independent, so I was brought in as an independent executive, And there was always this understanding that there would be this transition. So from day one, you already got that feel that they knew what they want to achieve. They saw in me certain commitment that I will, if I came in and said, look, you need 10 years just to figure this out, it might have scared me off, but I still got that message without receiving it in the exact words. So there was always this understanding that the company had a plan. And I respect organizations that have a structure and a plan, and they're willing to play the long game. It's a 100-year-old organization. You have to have a long game, effectively. So I always got this sense of, look, figure out the CFO thing. Okay, so that's already quite daunting. You're changing from an advisory role where you have multiple clients, and suddenly you're just jumping into one, massive organization that needs that focus. And as the time came by, it felt quite natural, to be honest, because a number of years had passed by. I had, learned everything about the organization, and the management at the time were very clear on their end goal. So that end goal kept directing me. I would say the major difference between the two roles is there's a change in mindset. So there was a time where I was practicing a little bit of both. So I was playing CFO and sort of transitioning to CEO. And you could tell there is a bit of a difference in the mindset of a CFO and a CEO. A CFO, I kind of coined the term, but I look at CFO as looking at what is the worst case scenario, while a CEO tends to focus on what is the best case scenario. So at some point, it's good to rely on another CFO so that you can realize the new projects and work on new initiatives that will take the group forward. But it's good to have, the backup of a solid CFO who is looking at the risk, looking at the opportunities, and weighing everything as a whole, because it's very, very easy and very exciting to get lost in all the projects that you work on. So it's good to have a bit of both. So until I had, the new CFO come in, the transition really happened when that happened. So I would say that, a solid CFO has come in now, and we work very well together. And it was only due to that I could really embrace the CEO function. So although it happened over a number of years, then there's that point where you have to really commit to that switch.
Yeah. So did you have any kind of challenges going through this to be a CEO, or when you actually became a CEO? Were there any challenges that you faced, or was there any point in this whole process in your career where you second guessed that you were on the right path, or you felt like, is this really for me? Or was there any challenge that made you want to give up and quit, or anything like that you experienced?
So there are challenges all the time. It comes from a place of understanding your own weaknesses so that you can overcome them. Once you face those challenges head on, I fear them much less now, because previous experience will show me that, with the right mindset, you'll figure it out. It's just a matter of time. So yes, there are always those new challenges. You're always doing something new for the first time, until you get over that first time. There are a lot of firsts over there. I do like to involve myself in continuous education. So I expose myself quite a bit to the right trainers, educators, peer networks, and people have developed me both on a personal basis as well as a business basis. The mindset needs to keep evolving. Times are changing way too fast to remain constantly in the same place or the same mindset. So that has helped me overcome the major challenges. I'll be lying if I say there were times where they really pile up, especially when you have a lot of things going on, and naturally, even in your own personal life, things occur unexpectedly. So those are the telling challenges that sort of really see whether your warm up and previous challenges have built something quite robust. If you compare, like what we went through during COVID, I always use that as the best test case. Those were the moments where, the solid minds of the entrepreneurs, the executives really had to bring their A game and deal with challenges that you have no experience in. And most individuals who have had any similar experiences. The impact might have been similar to other occurrences, but the fact that you have so many unknowns is a challenge in itself. And I do try and talk to the key people in my life to help me get through it. Now more than ever, I'm investing a lot of time in the right communication, the right mindset, skill ups that I need for myself and the people around me. I've embraced certain people in a way to help me get through some challenges. They're there. I think it's my acceptance of of my weaknesses as well as my acceptance of the reality that things are going to happen. And we'll be, joking ourselves if we don't accept those realities.
Yeah. So for the inspiration, you've probably touched on it a little bit already. So your inspiration and motivation, you surround yourself with the right people, but you also continue doing this ongoing learning because, like you say, the market changes so much. Does that sound accurate? Or do you have a business mentor, or is there any videos that you watch or podcasts that you listen to, or is it just a case of the people that you surround yourself with and then the training courses that you do on an ongoing basis? How do you keep that inspiration and motivation?
It's pretty much all of that. So I'm part of a very strong network where we have developed each other on a personal, business and family basis. And as long as I keep focused on the fact that I need to keep investing in myself, my family and my business all together at the same time, then I tend to believe that most of the issues that come my way can be dealt with. Mm-hmm. I also focus on the motivational factors by attending various seminars, various conferences where there are key people who have usually been through something. Learning from someone's experiences, as well as your own, are a different level of learning. When you hear, first-hand experience of what someone's been through when it's really been tough, puts a lot of things in perspective. So I ensure that my motivation comes from that. I get a lot of motivation from my family. My wife and kids, mean a lot to me. So a lot of those challenges that you face, you tend to focus a little bit on them, and it gets you through that. Also, you get to celebrate those moments in business that you have certain achievements, and going home to them, tell them about that is exciting in itself. I also invest quite a bit in my own hobbies and my own personal interests, so that help me break away when it does get a little bit heavy loaded.
Okay.
But effectively, it's a bit of everything, and just I think that trifecta of the personal, family, and business development happening all at the same time, equally as much as possible, does help her quite a bit.
Wow. Okay. So you still focus on yourself, which is incredibly important. So it's not just work, because you do so much. I was thinking, oh gosh, he must work, 15 hours a day or something like that. But you do take time for breaks, or was it more at the beginning that you were working a lot and now you've kind of found that balance?
Absolutely. I went through those periods where I was working very long hours because the educational I felt was quite big back then. So if I really want to, pursue a career in certain things that I was ambitious to go into, I didn't need to invest the time and effort. So I did work a lot more before. As time went by and I was investing much more energy and time in my family and myself, I started realizing the equality. But I also find when you surround yourself by experienced individuals and they're giving you those warnings and they're giving you that insight, it's pointless to ignore it, especially when you hear it more than once. Yeah. So you've come across quite a few people who have been through a lot, and they have their regrets and they have their pointers and their insights, and a lot of them would warn, about that overdoing it. But I do find there are those particular periods in your life, whether you're in your 20s or in your 30s and moving towards your 40s and then beyond, there are those shifts do change. So I'm only able to speak the way I am because I've been through all of that. I've put in the hours. Yeah. And now it's funny because you think you're doing much more, but you're much more efficient with your time. You value your time more than anything that exists. So once you do that, it becomes a bit more clear. But it is a journey. It's not something that I learned overnight. And anyone who's struggling with that, rest assured, you keep believing in that, you'll get there eventually. Yeah. But as long as you rank, what's important to you always, and you keep that as your North Star, everything else tends to fall into place. I've had my fair share of challenges, both personally and in work, and their educational experiences at the very least, they're tough and they mess with our emotions and our state of mind. But you have to keep investing in yourself, constantly to keep moving ahead.
Yeah, that is so true. And how did so you also have a couple of businesses as well. How different is that obviously being the CEO of a huge organization and then starting a couple of things on your own, what is the difference in that, and how difficult is it, or how much easier is it, or, can you just give us a bit of insight into that? What the main differences are?
So I find that any decision you do is best made when well informed. Now, there's obviously a limit to how much information you can receive to make a riskless kind of decision. So they rarely exist. But having the information available to you helps you make those decisions. Now, those moments where you get like that spark and you get that aha moment tends to be a little bit more in your own thing, because you're the guy you have to face if it messes up. When you have a lot more people to answer to and a lot more responsibility, your risk management persona, your risk management mindset tends to be a little bit stronger and a little bit more awake, if you like. So the ability to take certain risks is obviously much easier when it's yours. When you're dealing with organizations that have a lot more dependents, a lot more stakeholders, you have a sense of responsibility to a wider group of people. So that obviously has to be taken into consideration. So I would say that's the major difference. Owning my responsibility, whether it's to myself, and my family only, is not putting them at more risk than they need to be, versus putting a lot more people at risk where, small decisions could impact something quite large, or taking something dramatically large, which is different to the norm of the particular organization, could have an impact on the lives of others and not just mine. So I think that is the biggest one. Obviously, when it's your own thing, even those slightly easier decisions are much easier to make and much quicker to make. So there's that ability to be a bit more agile when it's yours and when it's a much smaller setup. And that's something that you need to try and keep even in the larger organizations. The ability to take decisions quickly is extremely important, especially for modern business. But it's obviously much easier when the setup is smaller. So here we're comparing to my startup innovations versus 100-year-old organization. So it's quite a large spectrum. They're on opposite ends.
Yeah.
So I would say those two factors are the ones that really differentiate between the two.
Okay, and if you was to give any advice to people, first of all, so this is a two-part question. It's to people that want to start their own business. I'd like you to give some advice coming from yourself and your own experience, but also you've got that accountancy background. So, a lot of us get a bit nervous when it comes to starting a business. I know a lot of friends that have started businesses, and the first thing they'll do is come to me and say, look, how do I set up my limited company? Do you know any accountants? So there's a lot to think about, and a lot that people don't know, surprisingly. So, what advice would you give to people who are thinking about starting their own business from your side and from the accountancy side?
Sure. And you're quite right. I mean, obviously having an accountancy background makes my life a lot easier when it comes to quantifying the risk. Once you understand the risks, I mean, that's something that you can easily team up with someone. So I wouldn't focus too much on that, and I'll come back to that point. I think it's really important to focus on what the end goal is sometimes as well. So not just to get caught up in those initial phases. So once you're clear on what you're trying to solve, what you're trying to provide to the wider network, it makes your value proposition much more clear. Mm-hmm. So let's say we're just talking about delivering a product or a service. I find that if you're really clear on the objective, you should kind of keep that as your direction. At least you know what you're trying to achieve. And being clear on that, and being clear on the problem you're trying to solve, or the person or the market you're trying to serve, will always keep yourself in the right direction. With that said, and it might sound as a contradiction, but it's also important, is not to be too biased and then by your mindset. Meaning that you can't just get too caught up in it that you're biased by the way you offer it or you deliver it. So you need to be able to cater for the sudden changes or the new apparent way that comes easier to you or known to you as you go through the motion. So I would definitely keep an open mind throughout. Surrounding yourself, so going back to the original point, surrounding yourself by the right people is extremely important. We need to embrace our strengths as well as our weaknesses. And if there are gaps, it's very important that you're made aware of them as quickly as possible. And it's fine to accept that were your limitations, and we need to, to be a bit more confident in the fact that we know things very well, but there are a lot of things that we don't know. We don't yet know. Perhaps we'll know them later. So teaming up with the right people. Also, another point is failure to some extent, disruption to some extent, problems are going to come your way. And you need to keep telling yourself that. So when they do come, you're not going to fall at the first stumbling block. You will have stumbling blocks. The most important thing is that you're able to get past them, and move on. And sometimes your first venture might not be your most successful one, and you might have to look at other opportunities. Mm-hmm. So I would definitely keep in mind the vision that there will be things that will come along. And as long as you have an open mind, as long as you're surrounded by the right people, you should believe that you will get past them, or you will rise above them and figure out something else as you go along. As much information as you might receive, it's still very unpredictable to start a business. There are so many changing environments around us and so many moving parts that, we can do the best that we can. So that genuinity, that first point I mentioned, will also keep you focused on that disruptive environment, but you know what you want to achieve. I would say those 4 things are something that have always helped me, because there's all the formalities that my accountancy background or any other accountant's background will help, an aspiring entrepreneur. So as long as you have those people around you, and you take informed decisions, just keep taking those decisions, keep moving forward, get past those hurdles and try and figure out what works and what doesn't. There are a lot of small changes you will probably make along the way. And as long as you're open to that, you better your chances of success. But success is not guaranteed ever.
Wow, that's amazing advice. And this is like a kind of a question that, there isn't really a straight answer, I suppose, because every situation is different. But there's a lot of people who have, families and they have jobs, and there's a lot of fear about leaving a job and starting a business. Do you have any advice for those people? I mean, some will say, be financially stable before you do that. Some will say, no, take that risk. Some will say, so, I mean, how do you view that? What would your opinion be on that?
That's obviously a tricky one. Everyone's circumstances are different. So obviously whatever I say is just my own experience, and one has to gauge their own personal situation. I created Pitchora specifically for that, just to test that idea, that concept, before any drastic changes are made or any dramatic, steps are taken. Pitchora in itself is literally a platform for interested individuals with an entrepreneurial mind, or testing their entrepreneurial mind, put their idea to test in a period of 3-4 months. So you don't need to disrupt your life during that period. So the idea is that you would apply to Pitchora in our case, and you'd figure out, and that you will be tested against sort of metrics that prove whether you're really committed to the idea, whether the idea really holds water, and all of that. So there are things you can do just to test it out, so that when you're trying to make a decision whether I dive into it or I try and become more financially stable and delay it sometimes till it's too late, it can be made at least a little bit closer to a more stable situation. So just saying, look, I have a really good idea, let me just dive into it. There are other things that one needs to look at, that you can have more control over. So like, we do look at the founder's character, mindset, experience, technical knowledge, just to see if we can start poking holes at the idea and the founder's commitment. Once you get that exposure, then I think you'll be in a much better position to say, look, I've really tried this out. I've brought in third-party experience to kind of test it out. So again, you're speaking to someone who came from an accountancy background, so risk management is ingrained in us, and we're quite good at doing that. So again, based on your circumstances, if you have really no ties and you have, no family to concern yourself with, and you have some money set aside, certain levels of risk are good to take. But alternatively, if you have a lot more commitments and you need certain financial inflows committed on a monthly basis, and one needs to consider about. But let's say, generally speaking, I would take small steps just to make your decision a little bit more informed. Again, I don't want to rush anyone into anything, but there are ways where you can communicate what you intend to do in a safe space, kind of get that initial feed. Feedback is extremely healthy, and communication, is the key to doing that.
That sounds incredible. There was nothing like that when I was looking. So it's Pitchora, is it? Is that just available for Maltese residents, or?
So this is the beginning, I guess, and I'd like to think it will grow beyond Maltese shores. At this point in time, we're looking at startups that have a little bit of a link to Malta. So they can be international, players, and they could be foreign residents, no issue with that. But because of our collaborative network at the moment, we're focusing on some form of link with Malta just to better their chances of success, because the entire setup is here. But it doesn't exclude foreign startups trying to, have a link to Malta and communicating with us via Pitchora. Yeah. But yes, it is a platform. And as you mentioned, back in the day, we didn't have all of this. We had little snippets of trying to test it out. So there is, if you get out there and you try and figure out where these platforms exist or where these support units exist, you will be able to take certain decisions and not so much in the dark as you might have done in the past, kind of thing. That's the thing.
Definitely. I think a lot of people would really like that. So thank you for sharing that, because I didn't know that they existed. So thanks a lot for that. And finally, I've got one more question, and this is in relation to your career. So, we've got people that want to follow the route that you've gone down. And if you were to give advice on that, whether that be being a CEO within a company or being a CEO of their own company, but within the financial services sector, offering the services that you offer, what advice would you give them into how they can achieve that and where they should start?
My interest at a young age allowed me to test everything out. So I would definitely get as much experience and exposure to the different facets of the financial services world, if that's what someone is after. Sometimes to the outside, the financial advisor services world, financial services world seems to be something which is like a one-trick pony, but it's really not. There are specialities and there are areas of expertise that would excite me and others that have no interest whatsoever. So I think it's really important that you get a little bit of a wide experiential, journey to figure out which are the points that you like. The way I see it, there are certain service offerings that play on different parts of your character, and your character tends to fit more towards one or the other, because you can either be on the structured end, where you're looking at your finance people and your CFOs of this world, which like things done in a much more structured way. If you find that you're sort of looking to create different innovative ideas, then the entrepreneurial journey or the CEO journey might be for you. I think it's important that you're true to yourself. I mean, it's pointless for me to tell anyone, take this route, because this route happened to work for me. It still works for me to this day. But like I said, I'm constantly looking for that challenge, and that's the character that I have. So I would definitely try and get exposure, even at the cost of not making money. Just whether it's an internship or a short-term experience, your initial level of education through experience is worth way too much than anyone could value. So I was fortunate enough that throughout my career I was put into certain areas and situations that allowed me to test different skill sets and form my own opinion. My career, although I took lots of advice, I take full responsibility for the actions and decisions that I took. And that could only be done by being exposed to these different things. Otherwise, you always worry about the what if, and what if I took that route or whatever. I would definitely, advise anyone just to get out there, test different things out, and gauge what one role or another means. And do speak to people, do speak to experienced individuals who have had, a variety of experiences that could help you make your own decision. But be true to yourself always.
That's amazing. Look, we've run out of time. I mean, I've got so many questions still. I could talk to you all day to get this insight, because that has been incredible. Look, thank you so much for sharing everything with us. And it's been an honour to have you here. I know you're a busy person, so thank you for taking the time and joining us on this podcast. We really appreciate it. So thank you for joining us.
It's my pleasure. Thanks again for the invite. I wish you the best of luck with the podcast, because I'm sure you're onto something great. And as long as we keep the narrative going, I'm always willing to contribute.
Oh, exactly. This isn't going away. Thank you so much, and have a great rest of your day. Thank you.